Welcome to Peninsula Seniors Out and About. Today we're in San Juan Capistrano with two of the members of the Forster family. John, would you like to say something about we're here and would you show us around?
Pat and I would love to. Wouldn't we, Pat?
We've been around this block once or twice the last 70 years, so hey, let's go.
Hi, we're in the Forster room so that we can describe to you the connection between the Forster family and the old mission in San Juan Capistrano. In 1845, Don Juan Forester, our great-great-grandfather, purchased the mission from Pio Pico, who was Don Juan's brother-in-law. As you can see behind me, our Pat and I's great-great-grandfather purchased the mission from Pio Pico for $710 in 1845. He, with his wife Isadora, moved in here and lived here for about 20 years. This is Don Juan Forester, his wife Isadora Pico Forster, his brother-in-law Pio Pico, who was the last Mexican governor of California, whom Don Juan purchased the mission from. And he then worked and created rooms here for his growing family. One of the big things that they did in this ranch area is tallow and hides. The hides were taken to Dana Point, named after Richard Henry Dana, and thrown over in the ocean and sailed around the Cape to be sold. Typical mission life is adobe, and it was a very casual life and a very relaxed life.
This is an artist rendition of the parlor of Don Juan Forester, which would have been located right here in the mission. This is his eldest son, Marcos Forester, who was a great-grandfather to both John and I. Things went good for about 20 years. They really hit it big when the gold mines, the gold rush in Northern California, they started getting $50 for a beef. As before, they only got $2 for a hide shipped back to Boston or England, where leather was worked on. There was a tremendous schism between the government of Mexico and the Catholic Church in 1823. The Catholic Church had the missions taken away from them and secularized by the government of Mexico. At that time, the mission was auctioned off to John Forester, and from 1845 to 1865, this was his home and his ranch headquarters. By 1865, Bishop Alemany had sold President Lincoln on the concept that the missions rightfully should go back to the Catholic Church. Ownership reverted on March 18th, 1865. March 4th, 1865, Lincoln was inaugurated for his second term of presidency. March 18th, he signed the documents giving the mission back to the Catholic Church. April 9th, General Lee surrenders the Army of the Confederacy to General Grant at Appomattox. Celebrations break out in Washington, D.C. the next day. 4 days later, the ill-fated visit to Ford's Theater by the president, where he lost his life. He died the next day on April 15th. A bad day for America. When President Lincoln ordered the mission relinquished to the Catholic Church, Forster was forced to give up 44 acres and the residence right here at Mission San Juan Capistrano. However, he could fall back on the Rancho Santa Margarita y Las Flores in San Diego County, a mere 250,000 acres. Somehow he made it through that. Bishop Alemany started trying to get the mission properties back as early as 1853. It took 12 years for President Lincoln to sign the decree giving the mission back to the Catholic Church. Forster was forced to leave the mission and had to fall back on his Rancho Santa Margarita y Las Flores ranch of 250,000 acres. Somehow he made do. Here, President Lincoln is signing the document returning the property to the Catholic Church. The mission was after that time falling into disrepair, and the California Landmarks Club came in to save the missions in the late 1800s. Here's a copy of the document granting the Catholic Church ownership of all 21 missions in California, led by their leader, Bishop Joseph Alemany. He was the bishop of the whole state of California. You can follow it through here. Signed, President Lincoln. An interesting document.
Don Juan Forster's holdings were extensive. As you can see from the map on the wall here, his holdings stretch from what is now Lake Forest in the El Toro area all the way to Oceanside, and which includes what is currently Camp Pendleton. It was something about 250,000 acres, which was one of the largest land holdings ever in California. As mentioned earlier, the missions of California were secularized by the Mexican government in 1821. They remained secularized until Lincoln gave them back to the Catholic Church in 1865. Our great-great-grandfather, and also Pat and I, when we went to school here in the mission, were not worried about air conditioning because of the adobe walls that you see here, and you see the thickness of them, 4 and 5 feet thick, and it was almost cold, but of course that kept us awake, along with some knuckle banging by the nuns. We're at the entrance to the Sara Chapel, one of Father Serra's original chapels. There's a great history between this chapel and the Forster family. Many of the Forsters were married within this chapel, I being one of them. I stand before the back altar here in Mission San Juan Capistrano, the Father Serra Chapel. Of significance of the back altar is that it was fabricated in Spain. It is gold leaf on wood. It was shipped to California around the Horn in pieces, stored in Los Angeles in a warehouse for several years, reassembled here in Capistrano as the back altar. The significance of this chapel is that it's used on a daily basis. Many funerals and marriages are observed here. I was fortunate enough to be married here. In order to be married in this chapel, you have to be a longtime parishioner or a longtime family of the San Juan Capistrano Valley.
Here we are in the central courtyard of the mission. During ranching days, this is where the branding of the cattle would take place. And sheep were actually kept in here in little corrals. In the background on this side is the mission school where I started in 1950. John started there in 1940. The mission grounds weren't
I don't look that old, do I?
He came over on the Mayflower, I think. But when we used to come through the mission, there was treats for us on the trees. There were loquat trees, and the trees that John and I knew as guayabas, which we found out later were called guavas, but the Capistrano word for them was guayabas. The nuns were sometimes severe at mission school. My cousin talked about a classmate sitting in the corner with an actual dunce cap on him, and apparently he didn't do his lessons that day.
I can vouch for that, in that I have some swollen knuckles still from being rapped by the nuns for being there.
Guilt by association with my brother Tony, no doubt.
Yes, it was all Tony's fault.
Yeah, devil made him do it. Off to the left in the panorama is the convent where the nuns lived. They taught at the mission school starting in 1828. They phased out around the year 2000, but that's where they lived. At the most, there were 10 nuns there. When John and I were at school, there were only 4 classrooms, grades 1 and 2, 3 and 4, all the way through 7th and 8th. And they usually had a cook that would prepare their meals for them. But they were, our nuns were from the Maryknoll Convent in Ossining, New York. We've had a good tour here at the mission. A lot of good memories, some bad memories. Went through 8 grades of elementary education here. The last 26 years, I've been working as athletic director at the mission school. John, you attended a lot of funerals here. In fact, our parents have all been buried out of this church, and let us know what you think.
Well, I'm glad that I didn't attend my own funeral here, but I think that maybe we need to go down to the Historical Society building that your brother Tony, my cousin, founded many years ago. I think that it will be very interesting to the folks that are watching this.
Sounds like a good idea. Here we are at the ONeil Museum, a treasure trove of local artifacts, books, and photographs. The ONeil family funded this thing in 1979, and it's been a place for local social events through the years. It's a really good addition to San Juan Capistrano. The house is from the Albert Pryor house from around 1900. And it's been dolled up to look like a brand new house from 1900.
As I remember, we've had a few parties here. My sister-in-law had her 70th birthday party in this out here, and it's quite enjoyable, and it's definitely a part of San Juan Capistrano history and Forster history.
Here we are at the ONeil Museum. My brother Tony was president of the Historical Society when it was moved a block from the adobe restaurant area. Here's my brother Tony, some of the kids from the Boys and Girls Club that he helped establish 20 years ago. He had been mayor of Capistrano in the early 70s and was always on some board in town that Ramrod Civic Pride and that. He grew up with John and went to school with him for 12 years. More about that right here.
Yes, Tony and I grew up together. We went to mission school together. We went to Capistrano Union High School together. We were in the largest graduating class ever at Capistrano Union High School, all of 43 people. We were also in a very large class when we graduated from the mission school. There was 8 people in that class. I remember Tony well, and as Pat has mentioned, he was a founder of many things in Capistrano, and Capistrano owes a lot to Pat's brother, my cousin, Tony.
The namesake of the ONeil Museum here in Capistrano is the ONeil family. Here is the matriarch, Marguerite Daisy ONeil, and here are a lot of her children. We got Richard ONeil and his daughter Alice ONeil Avery. Richard ONeil died a few years ago. Had a big funeral at the Mission of Capistrano, and pallbearers included Governor Jerry Brown, Governor Gray Davis, and also in attendance was Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi. Let's just say he was a higher up in Democratic political circles. He had been the chairman of the State Democratic Committee during the 70s and 80s, and he was well connected. Here we have his nephew, Alice's son, Tony Muiso, Jerome Moiso, and their brother, Doug Avery. There's a lot of family shots here, but their significance historically to the Forsters, they bought the ranch from us in 1882 when Don Juan Forester died. They helped move the ONeil Museum from its location at the adobe restaurant down here about 20 years ago, and have kept it going with generous donations. Here's some ranch scenes from the ONeil spread. They're still in the ranching business and made it quite a social hub of San Juan Capistrano. More about San Juan Capistrano is our cousin, who's over on the wall. To tell us more about her will be my cousin, John Forester.
Along with the ONeil family, we have another benefactor here of the museum. Her name is Isadora Bauer. Her mother was a Forster. My dad, Pat's dad, and Isadora, commonly known in the family as Babe, were first cousins. She donated quite a few of the pictures that you hear, plus a significant amount of money before her passing. And we will always remember Isadora as Babe. In every family, we have a few skeletons. This happens to be one of them. This was one of Don Juan's sons, Chico Forster. First name, given name was Francisco. He was quite the womanizer, and in one of his many promises, he promised to marry a young lady in Los Angeles, and the next day he left to do something else. She caught up with him and shot him in the eye, which of course killed him. The house you see behind me is a Victorian house built of solid redwood in the 1890s. It was not originally located here. It was relocated about 10 years ago. It was originally located a mile and 7/8 out on Del Obispo Road. That was my parents' house. I grew up in it. The closest house to us at that point in time was a half a mile away. I have many fond memories of that house, and fortunately it has been relocated here to the historic area of San Juan Capistrano.
Here we are on the Los Rios district. The Rios family has lived here for over 200 years. They have an original adobe, could be the oldest house in California inhabited by the same family. On this street are a lot of wooden frame buildings where the kids that grew up with John and I, Mexican and Indian families, went to school with us, played baseball with us. If they didn't go to mission school, they went across the street to San Juan Grammar School, and then we all got together at Capistrano Union High School. Now, the deal about San Juan Capistrano in the 50s was there were 760 souls living here, not people. When there's that few of people, you call them souls, and that's who we grew up with. The Lec House in the background belonged to my Aunt Alice Lec and her husband Arlie. They had an orange orchard a mile east of town, and a few years ago the developers moved this house down to town at my brother's urging and city mandate. They never had any children, so this is their legacy, the Lec House right here in the middle of San Juan Capistrano.
I'm here in front of a very historical jail. John, can you tell us a little bit about it?
Well, this jail was fabricated in 1860s, first jail in all of Orange County. Unfortunately, I guess we made the Orange County Sheriff mad because he's got us locked up for the day. We just hope that at some point in time he's going to let us out. Pat, do you have anything?
Yeah, my dad was Justice of the Peace from 1938 to 1953, and sent a few of our local citizens to the cooler, But luckily, we have connections here. Sheriff Brad Gates is going to spring us from jail on this occasion. Come on over, Brad.
This has been Peninsula Seniors Out and About. I sure hope we can spring them out soon. Sheriff, you going to let them out?
This time, I'm going to let them out this time, but not next time.
Hey, they're not serving lunch in there, you know.
They're not.
Congratulations, you got out.
Got out. Thank you. Thank you,
Got a
Brad.
clean sentence.
Thank you, Brad.
Did your time.